Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, or whenever you may be tuning in to the Growing Our Future podcast. I tell you, we just love hosting these podcasts where we invite subject matter experts, people that are willing to share the 4 T's: time, talent, treasure, and testimony. Time, talent, treasure, and testimony. And today is no different. We've got an extraordinary example of somebody that grew up in that blue and gold jacket, has now gone on to a leadership position in the great state of Texas. And we're really proud of him. Honored to tell you that I've had a front row seat to this man's career, and it is awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of the Texas Workforce Commission, Chairman Bryan Daniel. Bryan, thank you for joining us today.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much for having me. I got your email about this opportunity, and I've done a few podcasts here and there, and it's part of my job, and so I do a lot of different things like this. Man, I'm excited about this one. You guys are doing great things there with Texas FFA and the FFA Foundation, and all the work that we're doing to help young people find success. And so, man, I jumped at this chance. I was happy to jump on this with you and really talk about some things that I think people probably find pretty meaningful.
Well, and for those that don't know, I got to tell you, it's nice to have people like the chairman, where when we pick up the phone and call them, they answer it, number one. And number two, it's exactly what he just said. He said, how can I help? We've got a group of teachers coming to Austin. Could you come visit with them? Be glad to. We got a bunch of students coming to the Capitol. Can you come visit with them? He said, I'd be glad to. And that right there is exactly what this podcast is about. If you want to know what the future is, grow it. Well, how do you grow something? You got to plant seeds. So today, the chairman, myself, we're going to hopefully plant a few seeds of greatness that'll make your lives better, make Texas better, and make our country better. All right, Mr. Chairman, you ready to get started?
I am ready to get started.
All right, so the first question, everybody gets the first question, probably one of the most important questions. Mr. Chairman, what are you grateful for today?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I'm grateful for a lot of things. I've got a great family. I've got opportunities to spend time with my family. I've got a great job, and one that I really enjoy. But I'll tell you, those are just components of the thing that I'm most grateful for, and that's that God's really put me in a position where I can make a difference in the lives of a lot of people. And I don't have to intrude in their lives to do it. I just have opportunities, just in decisions that I make every day. And so I'm in a good spot personally with my family and my work, and that just really empowers me to be able to do some things through my work and through my community that I think gives Texans an opportunity to really have a bright future. And there's things that I do that I know people don't even know about, but I know about, and it makes me feel pretty good about that.
That's awesome. I agree with everything you just said. I love my family. I love my flexibility. I love my freedom. I love my liberties. I love the fact that I have a job that I have a little bit of money left over at the end of the month, and I might be able to help somebody else out because of that. There's a lot there. I mean, if you're not careful, the news and social media can get a little noisy. It can get you down. But sometimes if you'll just look around at all that we have to be thankful and grateful for, it kind of rejuvenates you and says, you know what, it's worth going another round. And I appreciate your words about, that it's not about us. There's a saying that we use around the Foundation Ambassador Program. It says the essence of leadership is to plant trees under whose shade you may never sit. And I think that's what you're referring to, that you're getting that opportunity. All right. All right. Well, let's talk about the chairman. So you're the chairman of the Texas Workforce Commission. I don't think that you just fell into that seat. I think there was probably a history, a testimony, and a story that takes us on a path to how that became possible. So let's start where we're most familiar, and that is your FFA career. I know that you grew up in South Texas, but then you moved up to North Central Texas. Why don't you take us through, Bryan, your ascent to the chairmanship of the Texas Workforce Commission?
Oh my goodness, it's a long path, and it's a weird one, and they always are. I was born in San Benito, Texas, down in Cameron County. My dad, my mom too, they're both school teachers, and so when they graduated college in the middle 60s, that was a great sort of opportunity for teachers, and so they moved down to the valley. My dad was a chemistry teacher, mother was a kindergarten teacher, and my dad ultimately worked his way through the ranks and became the assistant principal at San Benito High School. And then, right as I was about to start high school, he got a call from his hometown, Itasca, Texas, up near Hillsboro, between Waco and Fort Worth, and they asked him if he wanted to come up there and be a principal in Itasca. And so we moved. And you want to talk about culture shock? I was born in San Benito. I was raised in San Benito. I was very much a part of that community. San Benito at that time was an agriculture community. Lots of crops, any crop you can imagine can grow there. A lot of cattle too, being South Texas. And so I knew something about that. My best friend in life was in agriculture. His dad raised grain, sorghum, and cotton. And so, I played on their farm, worked on their farm. My dad's best friend in the Valley, or at least one of them, was the ag teacher, a guy named Sonny Brazil, was the ag teacher at San Benito High School. And they hung out. They went to football games together. And I guess when I got to be too big a nuisance, my mother would send me to the football games with my dad and Mr. Brazil. And so, yeah, I had this sense of agriculture was important, but my family was a teaching family. We moved to Itasca my freshman year. I grew up in the last of the era where it was VOAG 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Right.
You didn't pick and choose. You didn't decide your courses. You started in VOAG 1. They dyed your hands green with cattle tattoo ink. You walked around school like that for a week. And we did a lot of things we didn't even understand why we did them, because they just told us to do them that way. So Ag 1, all the things that involves, and junior chapter conducting through FFA. We didn't really see a line between our VOAG, or vocational agriculture classes, and our FFA, because it was all one then. We didn't really separate it out. I mean, FFA was just a natural extension of what was going on in the classroom. And I liked that. I was an athlete too. I played football, but in a 2A school, you get to do everything. And so I played baseball and football, and I was actually, I mean, this is not, 52-year-old looking back. I was actually pretty good at football. I got the patches on my letter jacket back then to prove it. But I was equally good at FFA. And the thing that really got me about that was my supervised, then it was called a supervised occupational experience program, and the SAEP now. And I had a couple show lambs, and someone sold me 2 ewes. And so I got in the sheep breeding business, and I took it seriously. In fact, that got me all the way through my Lone Star farmer degree. And but for some boneheaded decisions on my part, I could have got an American farmer degree out of that. And the boneheaded business decisions were actually really good for me. They kept me from getting an award, but I learned a lot about livestock and how to really raise livestock. But it all blew wide open my junior year, and I say this sincerely. So I got really interested in the speaking contests my senior year or junior year. And by the time my senior year rolled around, I broke my arm playing football. And so I doubled down and put all my efforts into the extemporaneous speaking contest, which was in October at Sam Houston State University. And I won. It felt good because for the first time, for a fairly accomplished student, I was valedictorian of my class, student council president, National Honor Society president. It was a 2A school. We did it all. We really did. I had this very successful sheep business. I know it sounds silly, but it was true. And yet, for the first time, football, I won all district, all area, baseball, awards there. But for the first time, my senior year, I actually felt like I was on top of something. And it was a speaking contest. And so, but there was this weird sort of glitch in the matrix back then. So the state winner in October of 1987 did not compete in the national contest until November of 1988.
Right.
And so, I get my award, all was good, spring of my senior year, all that involves, graduate, go to Texas Tech University, get immersed in that. And then, I get this call saying, hey, brush up on your books because you got to go to Kansas City, Missouri, because you got to compete in the speaking contest. And I went and I lost. I got beat in regionals. Now, I will say this, the young woman that beat me, as I recall, went on to win the national contest, but we had 4 regional winners that competed on the main stage for the national contest. And I didn't really think I could lose, but I did. She did a remarkable job. I mean, she was amazing. and I didn't think much more about it. I was studying agriculture at Tech because the San Antonio Livestock Exposition and Texas Tech University threw money at me if I would study agriculture. And so it's really, frankly, all I knew. So I did. And I did well. And they asked me to stay on and get a master's degree, which I did. And I taught a class. We had a professor leave unexpectedly the semester before I became a grad student. And so I ended up teaching a class that normally a faculty member would teach, but they had a grad student teaching it because they were trying to fill that faculty position. And I'm like, this is like 3 days a week of competing in an extemporaneous speaking contest. This is amazing. I had no idea there was something like that. So I finished that. I looked around for a job. The job market in sort of the early 90s was really interesting in agriculture. And I did not want to be a salesman, believe it or not. I was doing everything in my power to not be a salesman. I'd gotten married, and she was working in agriculture, and we were in Lubbock, and the dean of the college, that was Dr. Sam Curl then. Dr. Curl came to me and says, you haven't like nailed down a job yet. I said, no, I'm being kind of picky. I know there's jobs out there. I'm not too worried about it. I'm just trying to find the right one. He says, well, you can stop looking. Why don't you just go to work for me? And I said, well, there's an easy button. Yes, I thank you. So I became the coordinator for student and alumni programs for the College of Agricultural Sciences at Texas Tech, simply because somebody came to me and said, hey, you should do this. I did that for a couple of years. It was great. And I traveled all around, recruited FFA students. One of the guys that I'm friends with today, and I spend a lot of time with here in my home in Georgetown, we are friends because I tried to recruit him to come to Texas Tech when he was a state FFA officer and 18 years old, way back in the day. And we talk about that all the time. Those friendships are lifelong if you'll let them be. Anyway, a couple of years, we had a department chairman there named Paul Vaughn, and his brother was the executive director of a group called the National Council for Agricultural Education. And apparently they were having a hard time finding a project coordinator for a project they wanted to do called Reinventing Agricultural Education for the year 2020. And they'd interviewed some people, and people didn't want the job. And I don't think it paid enough, but I didn't know the difference. And so that job was in Washington, D.C. And Dr. Bond said, you should call my brother and apply for this job. I did. I flew out there. I interviewed. They gave me the job. I took it for $20,000 less than anybody would have even considered, because I didn't know about cost of living differences back then. I thought that whatever you made in Lubbock probably gets you through in DC. So I learned about economics with that decision. And
Oh, wow, that's good.
yeah. So my wife follows me out there. She's not so sure of this. She was right. And she ends up taking a job on Capitol Hill working as the ag aide to a congressman from Texas named Henry Bonilla, great guy. And I'm doing my thing. But the job I was in at the council, this Reinventing Ag Education job for the year 2020, was it was a 3-year assignment. It was nothing more than that. So she's working on Capitol Hill. I'm working at the National FFA Center. We do this for 3 years, and at the end of 3 years, all of a sudden, it's like this job's coming to an end, which I knew, and I didn't shock me. I'm like, man, I better find something else to do. And right at that time, Larry Combest from Lubbock, Texas, became chairman of the House Ag Committee. Mm-hmm. So I called over there and said, Texas Tech Red Raider, Larry Combest fan, can I interview for a job? And lo and behold, I got an interview because I played on the softball team that the deputy chief of staff played on the Washington Mall. And that was my first real lesson in it's who you know. That's how you really figure out like what's next. I didn't get the job because I played softball with it. I got the interview because I did. I assure you of that. Wow. And I had some people helping me. Anyway, a couple of years, they called us professional staff back then, but I was essentially a researcher and a legislative analyst for the chairman of the Ag Committee. And then in 2001, President Bush got elected. They were looking for state director for rural development for Texas. Senator Phil Gramm knew of my work in Congressman Combest's office, asked me if I wanted to be nominated for the job. I said yes. Congressman Combest and Congressman Bonilla and frankly Congressman Stenholm all kind of put in a good word for me. And next thing I knew, Tamara and I were traveling back to Texas for me to be the state director for rural development at the U.S. Department of Agriculture in the Bush administration. Did that for some time, about 5, 6 years. 6 years I did that, and then really just wanted to take a different direction. So I became a vice president for business development at Ag Workers Mutual Auto Insurance Company. Learned a lot about marketing, the private sector, some things I'd never experienced before. And I did that right up until, so I did that in '07. I did that until 2012. Sorry, 2011. And in 2012, I went over to the Texas Department of Agriculture to be the state director for rural development for Texas for then Ag Commissioner Todd Staples. He had been given a lot of these programs in the 2011 legislative session, and so they needed somebody to run them. They talked me into doing that, and so I went back. And at the time, I didn't know what I was doing. I was fairly happy what I was doing at Ag Workers with marketing, but there was something compelling about it. I like setting up new things. We don't always understand why we do some things, and it's still a mystery to me, except for this one thing, which is then in 2014, Greg Abbott was elected governor, and they started looking for someone to run economic development programs for the governor. And those discussions were kind of inconclusive. And somebody mentioned my name, and 3 people on his team were like, I know that guy. Oh my gosh, he does all this stuff for rural Texas. It can't be different for the whole state of Texas. And that was absolutely true. It's not different for the whole state of Texas. And so they called me and said, are you interested in this? I said, yeah. So I went over to the governor's office. I led his economic development team, which was like 80 people. And I was his senior advisor for economic development. Now, mind you, this is 20 years in the ag space. And then now all of a sudden, it's all economic development. And I'm finding out that all these lessons in agriculture, it's the same. It's the same for economic development. Any business is a business. 4.5 years with the governor proper. There was a vacancy for the public commissioner for the workforce commission, which is my seat that I occupy there. They had talked to a couple candidates about filling it. It wasn't. They couldn't find the person that they really kind of wanted to put in there because the governor sort of views workforce as an economic development issue. They asked me to try to find somebody, and I was not able to find somebody that was interested. And so they did what you always do in a situation like that: is go ask the guy that you asked to find somebody, tell him he's got to do it himself now. Had a long conversation with the governor about it. He says, you can totally do this. This is exactly what we need for you to do, because we've really got to get Texas aligned where employers understand that no matter what it is they want to do here, they can find workers to do it. And this is interesting because I've been in this staff role for 20 something years, 25 years at this point, for various people. But this is the first time they're like, no, we appoint you to this and you're independent of us. I mean, we still work together, but you're going to run this agency along with your 2 commissioner colleagues, and you guys are just going to do this. And I'm like, well, you know what, leadership. So here we go. So we went and did that. That's where we are today. Now, I'm going to tell you, none of this path makes sense. When I graduated from Texas Tech University, I did not know there were professional staff on committees in the Congress. I certainly didn't know there was a National Council for Ag Education. I knew about Ag Workers Insurance because that was my insurance provider. That's the only known entity I ever worked for. I had no idea. I knew there was a U.S. Department of Agriculture. Had no idea there was a Rural Development State Director. I had no idea. Same at Texas Department of Agriculture. And I was vaguely aware the governor had an economic development advisor, but I didn't come about that information until much later in my career. At 22 years old, there's not a single one of these jobs I could have known about or prepared for. And so I think about that a lot. I talk to young people and they're prepping for a certain job. And I keep thinking to myself, okay, but you should probably stop, because I couldn't prep for any of these jobs. A, I didn't know what they were. And B, they're very specialized. And so, my kids are always asking me, well, how did you know you could do it? And the answer is because I have skills. I mean, it's not like that movie Taken where it's like, I have skills. Skills. I mean, it's not, but I do have skills. I acquired these skills, and I realized that the skills are more important than the reason I acquired them. So I did well in extemporaneous public speaking. Let me tell you something. If you can learn to express yourself in a half a page or less, or 4 to 7 minutes or less, if you can learn to do that, you can work and be successful anywhere you want to work. I can learn whatever I need to learn about workforce. Like there's all this data I got to deal with, and I'm good at data because we deal with a lot of data in agriculture. I mean, the data skill came naturally. I can learn that part. The part you can't teach people is just this confidence to know that, yeah, I speak relatively well. I've learned to write, but I feel confident in my writing ability because somebody taught me how to do that. And it's just knowing that I do possess these skills, and so I'm going to market myself in a way that I can do that. And so I think about people always ask me, well, how did you get there? And they're trying to get a blueprint from it. I'm like, you're never going to get a blueprint from this, but I'm going to tell you the recipe because it's not proprietary. It's like acquire the skills people need, and then the second part's even more important, and then let people know you're willing to deploy those skills on their behalf. Even if the somebody is you're like, I want to start my own business, I want to do that. The skills are all the same, whether it's entrepreneurial or you're going to go on someone's payroll or a hybrid situation where you're willing to work for an individual, but you're on your own terms. So you're a consultant or a contractor. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Stop trying to draw a blueprint for a particular job that you think you want, and like all the things that you think are stepping stones to that job, because that's going to change. What's never going to change are the skills that are in demand in the workforce. And I was just frankly, I was lucky. I was lucky I had an ag teacher that kind of recognized his guy Daniel, he won't shut up. So let's take this his willingness to talk and let's apply this in a way that might be beneficial to him, and particularly so I don't have to listen to him anymore. I mean, whatever his motivation was, he's a great guy. Retired Air Force, and then became an ag teacher. Went to school on the GI Bill and became an ag teacher. I mean, it's pretty amazing. But in looking at these skills and putting together and understanding that it's this skill set that I've acquired, it's also like occurred to me, and particularly my two kids, one's 23 and one's 20. One's in law school, one's a junior in college, and kind of watching how they acquire skills and me advising them. It's about skills. It's about the skills. It's about the skills. And watching them through athletics and their own FFA experience and the different things that they've done, it becomes clearer than ever to me is there are skills that you're born with and there are skills that you can acquire. And the quicker some mentor can help you discern the difference between the two, it's the quicker you can sort of chart that path and understand how you're going to apply those skills to get whatever it is you're trying to get out of life. Like I just wanted a good job that supported my family, that was interesting and not boring. And I succeeded every single time because I was willing to sacrifice money for interesting. And a lot of people aren't. And because I was, and I could market my skills, and I've had these fascinating jobs that are kind of one-offs, and they don't go together, but they all go together. And the path looks so natural now. But if you could appreciate the chaos of that, and particularly what my poor wife has been through in moving all over the country and doing things like that, and we didn't always see it clearly, but we kind of understood. Well, Brian's not bored, so that's good for everybody. And then when I turn around and look backward at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, simply because I could talk for precisely 6 minutes on any ag topic they threw at me. The fact that I've parlayed that into 25 years of, frankly, a whole lot of fun, and several $100,000 that they've paid me over the years. I think about that and I think, it's a blessing. It's a blessing that I figured it out. But the blessing was that there were people put in my path that could help me figure it out, and I was willing to listen to them. So that's how I got to be chairman of the Workforce Commission, which is a fascinating job. I'm in a 6-year term. I'm halfway through it, and I'm having a real blast. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of serious work to do and some problems that need to be solved. But I mean, if my goal was to find something interesting, I sure landed in that.
Real quick, can you be appointed for another term?
I can be, sure. It's really at the discretion of the governor at that point. So my term expires in 2025, and I guess if I'm still doing a good job, well, I guess Governor Abbott will still be governor then if he doesn't do something else. And so it would be up to him. But yeah, he could reappoint me, and you have to get confirmed by the Senate, but and that's a process. But generally, if you've done a good job, people know your track record.
I want to piggyback on what you've just shared, because you just shared, I really think, the basis of this entire podcast. And that is this. We tell the FFA kids, how many high schools are in Texas? And they're like, I don't know, a lot. I said, yeah, a lot, over 3,000. How many of them have graduating senior classes? Every one of them. So everybody's going to graduate. Everybody's going to be looking for a job, a scholarship, or an opportunity. My question to you is, what separates you from your colleagues? What separates you from your peers? And at the end of the day, it's a competitive edge.
Mm-hmm.
What's your edge? What makes your business unique? And I believe it's exactly what you've described, and it is the skills that you bring to the table. Those could be both those that you were born with and those that you acquired. So before I took the foundation job, I used to work in the boot camp. I worked with truant offenders. I worked in a prison. I worked with at-risk populations. And we had a model, and it was called the criminal career ladder. And I don't know if you've ever seen the criminal career ladder or not, but it's really fascinating because it's based on exactly what you shared. But I'm going to take the criminal career ladder, I'm going to flip it around and say, but look at what Bryan did, because the chairman is the example of the opposite. So here's how it works. You take 10 kids that get in trouble in school for the first time. They get sent to in-school suspension. What do those 10 kids sit around and talk about? What they did, how they did it, and what they're going to do. What are they learning? Skills.
Yeah.
And they employ those skills, and then they go on to juvenile detention. And now I've got kids from junior highs, middle schools, high schools throughout the entire county, all gathered together. What do they sit around and talk about? What they did, how they did it, and what they're going to do. What are they gaining? More skills. And by the way, their skills are getting better because now we're breaking the law. And now, of those kids, how many of them are going to go on to like TYC, Texas Youth Commission, which is basically incarceration for young people? Now we've got middle school and high schoolers from 254 counties in the state of Texas. And what do they sit around and talk about? What they did, how they did it, what they're going to do, until they use all of these skills to graduate into the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, where you and I get to take care of them throughout their time in jail. Now, what if we flip that scenario around to the Chairman Daniel example, to the FFA example? I go to that first FFA meeting. What do we sit around and talk about? How'd you do that? I think I want to do that. I go to my first district meeting. What do we sit around and talk about? Wow, how did you do that? Man, look at that. I want to do that. Go to that area meeting and then that state meeting, until one day I take all of those skill sets and I take them out into the world of life. And success begets success. So if I can learn to develop the right skill sets, I can ensure that I've got a competitive edge that will always be growing, that will always be nimble, be flexible, and be looking for that next opportunity. And obviously I'm disappointed that some kids choose the negative path. But I got to tell you, it's awfully inspiring to see people like you who went through that entire process, who gained all these incredible skills and put them to good use, not just for your own self and your own family, but for others. I think that's a great example of the importance of skills.
And I like the way you frame that as a competitive edge. I mean, if you think about it, I had all the same opportunities to misbehave that those kids did. And look, I mean, it's starting to get hard to remember what 13, 14, 15 years of age felt like. I mean, I'm pretty far removed at that. And my own time, my youngest is 20 years old now. I mean, I remember her teenage years. I didn't experience them, but I observed them. And I don't think a lot's changed in sort of the way kids are, but I had the same opportunities to misbehave. And I think your average 13-year-old says attention is attention. The only bad attention is no attention. And I think your average 13-year-old just says going to ISS is just as good as being the best, creed speaker in the FFA chapter. If no one's asking me to be the creed speaker, then that's the only avenue that I've got. By the time you're 17, the die's been cast. To your point, I've either acquired troublemaking skills or I've acquired A skill that I sort of vaguely know might be useful, and I'm getting a lot of praise for it. So I'm going to keep doing it because I'm getting a lot of praise for it. And then I'm going to be, I mean, this, you may have people write comments on your podcast for what I'm about to say, but let me be perfectly honest. At 17, when I realized that there was a whole population of 17-year-old girls that really liked 17-year-old boys that could talk in public like that, that did not hurt my dedication to improving my craft. I mean, so whether it's football or baseball or public speaking, I mean, I was getting all the right kind of attention. The adults in my life were telling me, "Hey, great job." My friends at my school, were like, "Hey, man, you want a banner? That's pretty awesome." I'm meeting people, mostly girls. I'm meeting people from other schools, and I'm getting attention from them, and so it's like, well, I mean, there is mischief in high school's full of that, but frankly, I'm too exhausted to participate in the mischief because I got to do the speaking contest thing that's coming up. I mean, as adults, like, you want to press that on the young people, but they're not having it because you just got to give them a path, and if they're getting the appropriate level of attention from the good path, that's easier than the bad path. I mean, misbehaving's work.
Bryan, now I got to tell you one more real quick story. When I was working in the boot camp one time, the guards told me that he's a pretty troubled kid. He was a pretty active gang member, and they said he wants to talk to me. I said, okay. So they led me down a little private hallway, and we turned a corner because the kid didn't want the other kids to see him. And I'll never forget that moment. That kid just had tears rolling down his face. And I said, "What's up?" And he said, "Mr. Alejandro," he said, "I don't know my dad." He said, "And my mom, she tells me that she loves me." He said, "But I would give anything to hear somebody tell me they were proud of me." And I think one reason I like the FFA is exactly what you just said. Over the course of a kid's FFA career, we get to applaud and tell them that we're proud of them. We get to walk them across the stage at convention and say, "We're proud of you." And we get to do that in a very unique environment. And I think it has the impact that you just described.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and it's interesting because what you just described with the young man, I've observed this. I've observed this many times, and I think something that ag teachers probably don't consider often enough. They're doing it, and it's a very positive thing. But I don't think they're thinking about it. Is you want to talk about, like, when you're playing football, I love playing linebacker, and I had coaches from other teams tell me after the game, "Hey, really good game. I got recruited to play college football, but for an injury, I would have." And so coaches from college teams are telling me, "Man, I watched your film. That was a really good thing that you did. That was powerful." But what was exceptionally more powerful was the fact that ag teachers from other schools not only would tell me, "Hey, great speech, you did a great job. I really enjoyed hearing that." They did what ag teachers always do. "Hey, was wondering if you'd be willing to come to our school and talk to our green hands at our FFA meeting. Would your mom and dad let you do that? Do you think your ag teacher would help you do that?" Now, man, like, no coach ever asked me to go play football for his team because they weren't allowed to do that. But these ag teachers were like, "Not only did you do a good job, my man, I want you to come talk to these people that are going to be where you are 3 years from now." And you're like, "Well, yes, please. I'd be happy to come talk to your green hands." And then FFA and ag ed, but FFA takes it one step further. So I made me remember this. I'd probably forgotten this until you made me remember. When we were at the National FFA convention for me to participate in the National Extemporaneous Speaking Contest, all the extemporaneous speaking, all 48 of us, or how many there were invited to a private dinner at the Kansas City Club by Santa Fe Southern Pacific Railroad.
Yeah.
And they had all these business executives, and probably a lot of members of the National FFA Foundation board. I didn't know who they were then. And I remember like this club was like something out of a movie, and like we knew it was special. Look, ain't nobody from any of the Venida, Oklahoma, or Itasca, Texas, and none of us ever been in a place like that. But we knew it was exceptional, and we knew it was special. And all these corporate bigwigs, like we knew they were corporate bigwigs. We didn't know who they were, but every one of them was like, "Oh my gosh, like thank you so much for letting us take you to dinner in this fancy club. Like thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to do that." And it was weird, but it was good weird. And it sort of was like, think about all the things youth can get involved with. And I think fundamentally, like the young man you were able to work with, who just wanted somebody telling him they were proud of him, I think FFA lets adults who instinctively know, hey, if the kids know we're proud of them, they'll probably do more of the good things. It gives them the access to the kids in a positive, sort of parentally approved, non-threatening kind of environment. I mean, like, it would be weird if the CEO of Santa Fe Southern Pacific called up some high school kid, said, "Hey, come to dinner with me, great job." But you put it in the context of FFA, and we're going to take all of them, and we're going to talk to them, and we're going to try to figure out, how they're doing that. All of a sudden, that becomes this 48, 18-year-olds are sitting in this room knowing, hey, my mom and dad are pretty proud of me. They told me so. My ag teacher certainly is. Some of his buddies are pretty proud of me too. The state advisor told me what a great job I did. And now here's these people are like, these people are like, this is like big time. And they're telling me the same thing. Yeah, you know what? I hadn't thought about that, but that's a pretty powerful drug right there.
Well,
Just
you
this.
said it. You shared it. I mean, that's the thing. When I listen to your testimony, and that's the beauty of these podcasts, Chairman, is we bring on all these different presenters. What Tom Ziegler says may not resonate with somebody, and Taya Kyle or Mike Rowe or Cleo Franklin or whoever it may be, but the people that are tuning in, they might say, that guy's from Itasca. That's not a big town. We did a little research project a few years ago, and one of the things I'll never forget is we were doing these focus groups, and one of the young ladies from a West Texas community, from a little small town in West Texas, when she was asked why she loves the FFA, this is what she said. She says, "I love the FFA because I get to beat everybody." And they looked at her and they said, "What do you mean by that?" And she said, "Well, in sports, you only compete against schools your size." She goes, "In FFA, I get to beat them all." And she said, "I'm from a little town in West Texas, but I get to beat those big schools in Houston. I get to beat those big schools in Austin." And I thought, there's another interesting perspective of the product of that skill development, that you have the capacity to go out and compete against anybody if you develop your skill set appropriately. Everything that I'm telling you, your testimony encompasses. I have all these questions I want to ask you. I don't even need to ask them, because your testimony encompasses exactly what we're trying to draw out of what an ag science and FFA experience can do in prepping you for college and career success. You did it.
Well, and I appreciate that. I really do. I mean, because for me, it's sort of the life I've lived, and it's been incredibly rewarding thus far, and I hope it continues to be. But I think about the lessons that I can like give to other people. I mean, I have found that young people whose last name are not Daniel will actually listen to some of the things that I have to offer. And 23-year-old young person, last name Daniel, starting to figure out her dad actually might know a couple things, but which is good. But I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it, just only from the sense of that young lady from West Texas is absolutely right. When you get out in the world, you're competing against everyone. I like her winning instinct, her sort of winning attitude. That's good, and we're going to need some governors on that probably moving forward. But it's one of those things that I can't teach somebody to just have a drive to win, but I can teach them how to win with grace, and I can teach them how to win, in a way that they can empower other people as well. And so, but she gets it. The other thing I would say to young people is like, yeah, I went FFA, but like I don't want to work in agriculture. Well, about 75% of the country doesn't. And so, but what's wrong with learning something in an applied kind of way and then applying it more generally? The parts of my job that require me to be an economist, I'm not a trained economist, but the parts of my job that require me to be an economist, um, I'm better off for having studied ag economics, a very specialized economics, because I now study workforce economics, which is also a specialized economics. And while I understand the broader set of information, my ability to sort of distill it down to what we're trying to do came from my study of agriculture. And so kids always want to go to the most general thing they can do, but in reality, if you're good at FFA, might mean you're good at agriculture. They're not necessarily linked, but they can be. And you're learning to compete in this arena of all these people. Those lessons that you learn combined with this sort of applied knowledge that you're getting, once you put that into practice, oh my goodness, what a recipe.
Let me tell you something. We got 94 years of brand equity. We know that the workforce data doesn't support that all of our kids are going to become agriculturalists.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the fact that the workforce data does show that our kids will be more employable. They show up to work.
Oh, yeah.
There are less problems at work. They're more successful in college. I mean, all of the data that we do have demonstrates that our kids are an asset to the great state of Texas, whether they are in that agricultural job,
Without question,
whether in another job. So, all right, before we get too far off track here, I want to circle back. There's two questions I want to ask before we wrap up, and these are just give us some soundbite answers here. Are there opportunities, kids that are looking right now, are there going to be job opportunities for them when they get out of high school and get out of college in the state of Texas?
Yes, there are. There's your soundbite. The fact of the matter is there's 650,000 open jobs in the state of Texas right now, and it's been that way for the last 5 years. And so my anticipation would be looking 5 years into the future. So even if you're a high school senior right now, the idea that there won't be jobs waiting on you 5 years from now when you finish whatever training you're doing, hopefully college, maybe something else, there's lots of opportunities. Stick with that. There are opportunities in this state, which is the state I'm responsible for. And I would tell you, you should be able to exercise your choice of opportunities.
Perfect. So I hope everybody's listening to that. I tell people all the time, the chairman's job and my job and adults' job, our job is to create opportunities.
That's right.
The students, your job is to determine the outcome. That's so right. we need you to step up. And you got a chairman who's working at the state level. You got an organization that's working through an organizational level. We're trying to give you the tools and create those doors and make them bigger. Your job is to walk through there and take advantage of them. Is that correct, Chairman?
That is correct.
All right. Give us 3 leadership tips. If you were going to tell an FFA member or an ag teacher, here are 3 things that you can bank on. What are those 3 leadership tips? Oh
my goodness, 3 leadership tips. The first one would be make sure your integrity is obvious to all you're involved with. That includes honesty. Second, I would say be decisive. When you say you're going to do something, do it, but don't deliberate decisions. Make the decisions and move on. That's a key point for leaders. And then the third one, I would say it is no accident that they say the greatest of these is love. Just be kind to other people. When you're in a leadership position, there are people who don't have the things that you have looking for help. Be kind to them, especially. They're getting stepped on by the whole world, and a leader should 100% step up and be their friend. So yeah, I'd say integrity, I'd say decisiveness, and I'd say kindness. Those are the 3 things I would look for. That's awesome. That's really good. Well, Mr. Chairman, I can't thank you enough for always being willing to share. I can't thank you enough for being a great leader and a great example of what our organization is about. Your love for life, your passion for agriculture, your passion for life, your passion for excellence. It's all contagious, and our teachers see it and our kids see it. And I hope that those who tune in, they get it.
So thank you so much for your willingness to join us.
Thanks for having me. This was fun. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about some things that are very important to me. I know they're important to you, and for all the folks who are watching or listening. Man, keep up the hard work. This is why we live in such a great place and such a great time. And if we'll all keep at our task, we'll prolong that as long as we can and help all the next generation experience the same things we got to experience.
Well, before we leave, we always have one fun question. So you get the fun question.
All right.
So the fun question is, what's the best concert you've ever been to?
Oh my goodness. The best concert I've ever been to. I'm going to reveal something about myself I don't like to talk about. I did not see George Strait in concert until I was 40 something years old. And I saw George Strait at the NRG deal in Houston. And I've seen Alan Jackson, I've seen Robert Earl Keen, I've seen all these great shows, but seeing George Strait, who was on stage at, post-retirement allegedly, having the joy that was on his face was so much fun to watch. Plus, I love George Strait. So I'm going to say that, but I mean, there's so many. Golly, I've had so much fun.
Of all the podcast interviews we've done, that George is number one, by the way, just so you know.
Okay, well, good. I'm in good company.
He's a former Texas FFA member. I hope that if somebody watches this podcast and you have connections to the King, I hope you'd let him know that we would love to talk about roots and seeds, his roots in the FFA and planting seeds for the future. So if you're listening, King George, I'd love to have that discussion with you someday.
Well, I hope he does.
All right, Chairman, thank you so much. For everybody tuning in, thank you for joining us for the Growing Our Future podcast. Abraham Lincoln said that the philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be the philosophy of government in the next. What we do today is the future business. If we're in the kid business, we're in the future business. Well, our job is to make sure that we're planting seeds of greatness. And today, that's what happened. If you listen to the testimony of Chairman Daniel and you listen to his background, the experiences that he had, there's no question that those same things are scalable in your life. And we appreciate his willingness to share. We appreciate the opportunity to bring this podcast to you. Until our paths cross again, everybody go out and do something great for somebody else. Empower your fellow man and make our state and country the best place to live, work, and raise our children. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.